All right, guys. Welcome to another edition of the Jordan Garber Now podcast. This is the Friday, September 25th, 2020 edition. And boy, do we have a great show for you guys tonight. We have an interview with none other than MC Hardbody, none other than King Tragedy. Phil Stamper's going to come in again and talk some wrestling news with us, as well as a lot more. But, I've been watching some Netflix lately, and, I haven't been finding the time lately, but pretty soon when I eventually go to the one job, I've been watching a lot more Netflix. And one show that I feel has been really underrated has been Archer. Like, Archer is actually like a really good show with a good storyline, and I don't think people give the show enough of a chance. So, like, what do you guys watch on Netflix? But I've been watching a lot of Archer. I've been watching like a lot of Mike Tyson mysteries, and I've been watching like a lot of things along those lines. So, like, usually when I watch Netflix, I just stick to the same show and I keep watching it. But like, I've actually found a lot of cool stuff. Like, I'll watch The Office too from time to time, but there's this all other show called Hoops, which I also really enjoy too, which is awesome. So, be interactive. Let us know what you watch on Netflix. I always like checking out some new shows, and it's interesting to have a rapper on our show because I remember like the hip hop product in the 90s, and I was always like a fan of it, like the way it was back then. I feel like I haven't been a big fan of a lot of the new rap, to be perfectly honest. But what I have been a fan about is local artists and national artists creating a big name for themselves and trying to make the new generation of music actually look legit and look good. And there's a lot of new artists that have been amazing at doing that. Like, my favorite rapper, like, he'll always be Currency, and no one's gonna know who he is, but like, that guy just tells the best rhymes about life. And everyone has a different style of rap. So like, I know people like Nas has said like hip hop is dead, but like, I'm from an uneducated standpoint, I don't know if hip hop is necessarily dead. I feel like it's in a new era. Like when rap debuted in the 80s, that was a whole new era in itself. And in the 90s, and in 2000 rap, and in 2010, and what we got now with all of our new stuff. So I just feel like it's a continuation of the generation, and certain people like their different eras, and that's totally fine. I just feel like a variety is a very, very good thing. Just like in wrestling, you need to have a variety of products available, like Catch as Catch Camp or Soru, entertainment style wrestling, old dirty Souths, old school wrestling, Canadian wrestling, lucha libre, things along all of those lines. So I feel like if everyone likes different styles and shares their views and experiences, new styles get created, and more opinions get shared and generated, which creates more great ideas. So yeah, that's pretty much like the lineup for our show tonight. Should be a good episode. Once again, be sure to check out our sponsors. Without our sponsors, this show is not a possibility. So be sure to do that, and check us out every single Friday. And don't forget, get your Jordan Garber Now trading card right away. We'll be back with some more here on the Jordan Garber Now podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jordan Garber Now podcast. Now, we have a lot of interviews lined up for today, but we're going to kick it right off with some wrestling news, and none other. He's back again this week, none other than Philip Stamper. Philip, welcome back. How you doing, man?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
I am doing really good. Last show was a really big success. If no one's listened to our 3-hour special, it was pretty incredible. It took me all week to do it, and doing that between two jobs was definitely quite the journey. But it's the longest episode I've ever done, and I want to thank you for being a contributor to that. But
absolutely, and you got a little bit of nice coverage yourself out of that.
No, absolutely. To have someone like Corey Forrester on the show, that was awesome to get that publicity. And not just guys like that, but like to have like a solid 5 wrestler card, including yourself. It was jam-packed. We had the Cloud9 Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, which, if you guys haven't heard, it's a promotion down there in North Dakota, which is really, really strong. It's the strongest one out there, one of the top in the Midwest right now. We had yourself. We had Kevin O'Doyle, who's almost on top of the CWE food chain here in Winnipeg and across Canada. And who else did we have? We had another 2 guests, Corey Forrester, and then there's someone else. I kind of hate to mention out people, but no, it was the Canadian Goose, who is a standout in Alberta. So we pretty much covered uh, like literally all four corners of North America. America. We covered the West, and we covered the East, and we covered the central part. So it was really awesome. Anyways, just before we talk about WWE news, the big question is coronavirus affecting the indie product. You know, there's a lot of indie shows that are working shows with crowds, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
indie shows that are working shows without crowds and making it a pay-per-view or something like that, kind of making it a benefit for people to watch. Now, man, this coronavirus has changed the entire era in professional wrestling. It's a new era in itself. Has this impacted the independent wrestling product long term for the better or the worse? And that sounds like a stupid question, but there are pros and cons to this situation, which includes a bigger television audience due to people being bored at home. So, what's your viewpoint on that?
It is a big ball of mix right now. It is certainly for sure it's impacted all the lives, and for events, for the most part there's restrictions on size. Some of states can't even have events yet, and even I actually have an article for us to talk about a little bit later about what Pennsylvania is doing, because that may have a far further reaching issue with regarding states, and other states have no restrictions. So there are certain events that are running the way they did pre-pandemic, and even not even with masks being required by their local jurisdictions. So it's interesting to see how different areas are doing different things, and then correspondingly what those rates are like in different areas of the country. Um, and I say country because I pay attention a little bit more to things that are happening in the United States. But certainly, this is a worldwide pandemic. That's why it's a pandemic. Um, and it's going to have long-lasting impacts. There are some companies that are completely not running at all. They don't want to risk public safety. They don't want to risk their talents' health and safety. And in some cases, they can't because their states won't allow it. So there's really some frustration on the behalf of some promoters. One promoter just spoke to me tonight regarding the Commonwealth of Virginia, and their frustration with the Commonwealth has really actually led them to the decision that they don't think they're going to run anymore, even when the pandemic comes back. For some people, financially, they're not going to be able to, because whether it's because of the lack of events or how it's impacted their financial security overall, they're not going to have the financial capital to run when they move forward with events. So it really is going to depend on the place, almost by just location. Some people are going to more luck out than others just by that simple location. And then we're only talking about what's happening now, not what happens when restrictions ease up further because people, quote, get tired of them, and there are higher hospitalization rates and higher death rates again. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not going to say we're going to see tomorrow these huge spike in numbers, and it certainly isn't all wrestling's fault, but just how us as human beings and our behavior manifest themselves, they're going to get so frustrated with, like, well, why do I have to keep wearing a mask? I'm getting really frustrated with wearing a mask in public. Like, I just want to walk down the street. I'm not going to do that. Hey, this is getting a little bit ridiculous. I have to monitor how I go to the store and how often. Maybe I'm going to do some more things a little bit more freely. Hey, I want to go to the movies. Hey, I want to do these other things. Well, that's sort of what impedes then the growth, or not impedes, but actually gives fuel to the growth of the contagion of a virus that, yes, many people will be asymptomatic for. But I just saw a video based off of CDC data where there's sort of this actuarial curve of the average amount of deaths that occurred during the course of a year at different points of a year, and not giving a reason why. This is not I'm not even going to say like due to COVID, but just when you look at that curve for 2020, just in the United States, there's 193,000 deaths unaccounted for, and this is based off data about 2 weeks old now. So it's like, well, if there's that sudden rise in what's quote unexpected deaths, and comparatively year over year, we weren't seeing that. It is fresh for 2020. Well, that's saying indicatively there's something different in this year with the pandemic. So it isn't just a political machination. It actually does exist as a real threat for people's lives. Um, I think how we recover is going to depend on how quickly we move forward with a vaccine, some longer term safer health practices. I'm hopeful that people are more cognizant of good hygiene and how they clean their work areas, because I think moving forward past that, we're in our society are going to have to think about that. And in wrestling, we really have to think about that because there's not really physical distancing between wrestlers.
No,
And so
absolutely.
right. So how do you clean your rings? How do you keep your locker room clean? How do you socialize, and how do you meet and greet with fans or sell merchandise in a safe manner that now people are going to feel comfortable with? The curve of which the fan base are going to feel comfortable with returning into a large crowd situation in close quarters again. That's going to be a part of it too. So it's going to be a big effort that's going to take some time to restore some semblance of what it was like before.
Now, we talk about it on an independent stand of things, but let's talk about it on a major league scale. How's the coronavirus affecting that? Because now the NXT has scene has been affected with that, and it believed to be from a performance center coach. No names or anything, but like that on a major scale. Talking about now, how is that affecting things, and how many cons can that be? And is there any way they can turn those cons into a positive on a grander scale of things?
Well, so what? Again, exactly like I said, human behavior is going to start dictating. Oh, I'm going to relax my own stance, and I want to have the ability to socialize more without having to wear a mask. And use, I mean, that's real life. That just showed that at apparently out of the performance center. And so, they probably will revert back for in training purposes. No, you have to wear masks. No, we have to physically distant. I don't know how when it comes to the PC, and the frequency of this, a person A comes in every single day, or person B comes in just Mondays and Thursdays. I don't know how their schedule is per se. Do they rotate staff? I don't know what their cleaning mechanisms are. How were they wearing masks? Were they wearing masks during training? So there's I don't know enough about the mechanisms they actually have in place for good safety protocols, but I look at other places that I know are running training, certainly not as large as the WWE, but how they're separating days, how people will have masks on, even if they're wrestling. Like, there's talk about how we have good hygiene, how we don't share the locker room space in the same way we used to before. So behind the scenes, they're going to have to modify that. And now, I say fortunately in a relative term. Fortunately, they have moved their filming to the Amway Center in Orlando. So filming won't be impeded by what's happened at the Performance Center, other than the talent that has been directly impacted. I don't know how frequent the WWE is testing, if they're testing literally everybody once a week, if they're doing randomized sampling testing. So, I don't know how they necessarily caught that it could have been narrowed down to this Performance Center coach. So, who knows how that got figured out. But moving forward, okay, how do we keep maintaining the same safety mechanisms and protocols and keep them in place? And if they are testing once a week, which may be all they need to do, so that way when you go into the filming area, like, okay, we're testing you this week, and then though you can be asymptomatic for up to 2 weeks, most people are showing symptoms within 72 hours if they're going to develop symptoms. So therefore, some people will indicate like, okay, wait a minute, I'm not feeling that good. And if they're also getting tested at the same time by the WWE, both ways will be able to manifest themselves in, okay, wait a minute, we have some more positive tests. So it's going to change some creative things in the moment. But long term, I think the WWE is actually going to turn out a little bit better. Now, financially, the WWE is made in the shade right now. I mean, they are the number one wrestling promotion in the world. They have a tremendous financial operation. They're one of the top 250 companies in the United States with actual cash reserves. And they're making more money. I think they said something like they made more money this quarter because they weren't having expenditures for what it takes to go on the road and having to coordinate arena rentals and all the things they do with that.
One. All right, guys, welcome back to the Jordan Garber Now podcast. You guys can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And we are here with none other than the Beau Show, Beau Crockett. Man, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm doing real well. Definitely glad to be here for the first time, and definitely glad that you reached out, man. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, man. You've definitely been making a lot of noise now for over 7 years. And it all started with the likes of guys like Marty Reed, Quinn, and Bob Evans being mentors and trainers throughout your overall development. Kind of before we get into the companies you worked for and guys you had some great matches with, how important were those guys to your career, and what were some of the basic fundamentals you learned from each of them?
Well, Marty taught me how to wrestle. He trained from the ground up day one. Trained under him for about a year, and then not too long after I hit the scene, Preston Quinn took a liking to me, kind of took me under his wing, and then ended up doing a seminar with Bob. Bob came through NWA Fusion on multiple occasions. Now Fusion Wrestling, but he came through Fusion on multiple occasions, put on a seminar, and Preston had apparently already told Bob about me, keep an eye on me, and I guess I lived up to my end of the bargain, because pretty much ever since, Bob's had a guiding hand whenever he could.
I feel for instance like Bob's been like the like a professional wrestling, always making sure that he takes care of everybody, and not just taking care of everybody, but doing it while following the traditions of this amazing sport and craft. So, after getting all those fundamentals, going to those seminars, Fusion's actually where you started out in around your early years. So kind of tell us about your first few matches, like working the guys against like Brandon Day, or teaming up with Ryan Newsy, or facing Aiden Chambers or Zach Hilton. Like, what were those first few opponents like for you, especially in Virginia, performing Gloucester and Lancaster out of Pony?
Yeah, I actually hit Fusion probably about a year or so into my career. Most of my first year was in some very small North Carolina and Virginia companies, but the first notable company really that I competed for was definitely Fusion. And those first few matches were definitely learning experiences, because I hadn't been in um, any promotion like Fusion before, where it's a little more hands-on, where there's a little bit more direction and just a little bit more pressure, because it's a bigger place. So that was definitely a learning experience, and I relished the opportunity to learn every single time I was given the opportunity.
And when you had those like experiences in Fusion, you learned those first few matches. When did you start to learn about more in depth about chemistry? Was that within your first match, or was that in like your 50th match? Because it takes a long time for anybody to develop such a skill like that.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution, man. I swear, you can go years and think that you are pretty good at what you're doing, and you can be pretty good at what you're doing. But then, I would say probably a couple of years in, that it just really clicked that, I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. As a young hotshot thinks he just got out of training and knows everything there is to know. But it really clicks, and you're like, man, I have a lot to learn. And you really buckle down, you learn it, and the growth just happens by leaps and bounds at that point.
Awesome. So who are your first few favorite opponents, within the years of, let's say, 2012 to 2014? You guys that helped give you that push to the next level?
Okay, 2012, 2014. I would say, and it might not even be guys that you have at your immediate internet resources. Guys like Will Huckabee, guys like Joe Black. To this day, some of my favorite opponents, especially in that time frame, because we worked with each other a lot. between 2012, 2014. They were key. Probably some of the most physical matches I've ever had too. But those guys were probably in that time frame, hands down my favorite guys to work with.
Right on. Let's talk about your time there in Vanguard Championship Wrestling. You just had a few matches there, short run, but it's a very notable promotion out there in the beautiful state of Virginia. So what was that like? I believe you performed in the Liberty Lottery in 2014 there in Norfolk.
Yeah,
so
the
how was that
Liberty
about?
Lottery. Vanguard is, like I said, I only competed there briefly, but the Liberty Lottery is kind of the Royal Rumble. And it's funny because it is, for them, a legitimate random draw. You're in the back, and you're in the back, and you don't know exactly when your name's going to get called. It is a legitimate random draw. So I don't even remember what number I came out, but I had no idea before that match started what my number was. They legitimate random draw people out of a hat.
Sounds like a Norfolk thing to
do. Right.
Anyways, yeah, that's pretty crazy, man. Like, I never heard of that. Like, I remember, like, Pastor turns into wrestler that one time. Like, I think there's a crazy circumstance to 4 people in his 50-man battle royal that CWE pulls off. Actually, by the way, we're going to probably hear from Danny Duggan later in October to discuss the show coming up that he has going on here in Winnipeg. 100 fans only, but he's going to tell us a lot more about that. But no, he was. I was in the Rumble to Remember, and I remember my name being in the Rumble, and I'm like, "Are you guys crazy? Like, what are you guys doing?" It's like, we're out of guys. Would you rather not be in this match and there have me no main event? And it's like, what kind of pressure is that? I'm not even trained. And it's not like it's not about being trained. At this point, you got to fill the spot. Like, you have to. Like, it's an emergency circumstance. I get it. So I go out in this stupid suit and these loafers, and like I remember doing these stone cold stunners, and everyone's just falling around, terrible drop kicks, and then like the big boys start picking me up, and then I like take this pile driver, 2 choke slams, a boot, all this crap. I get thrown out of the ring by actually Japanese star Shigehiro Irie. It was pretty cool, but yeah, that was
cool.
It was an awesome experience. Like, as a podcaster, it's so important to at least experience the business, and that's why I became a ref.
Actually,
No, go ahead.
Nice. Actually, the most random draw thing that I have ever done is we did a tournament down at Next Evolution Wrestling in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. We did a tournament that was legitimate random draw. They actually put the contestants' names in a hat, and a fan would actually draw the names.
Huh.
And the first person would get drawn, and he'd go to the ring, and then the name of the second person would get drawn, and the booker at the time was Damian Wayne. And Damian would actually... Yeah, Damian would actually tell the second guy who he wanted going over as they were going out the curtain. The only thing that made my life a little easier is that I knew I was supposed to win the tournament. That's the only... But I had no idea who my opponents were. I just knew I was winning the matches. I had no idea who my opponents were until the actual names were drawn.
Now, this kind of goes into... We'll go into this a little later about AML, but back in 2016, like, there's a big product that Jeff Jarrett ran, and it was... I thought it was going to be the next big thing, to be honest. I thought it was going to be the AEW today, and you know what? You never know. There's still for that potential, but Global Force Wrestling, home of the Hickory Crawdads, actually, you made your debut for them in a dark match in this 30-man battle royal. Now, what was the hype around I don't want to talk. I can always say, oh, what was it like going there? Like everyone can ask that, but what was the hype around Global Force Wrestling as a company during your dark match at the time? Was it a pretty?
Yeah, there was a lot of hype because at the time they were just kind of partnering up with independent promotions and having their matches and things like that. Um, but the hype was that, hey, these guys are going to have a product, these guys are going to have TV soon, they're going to be standing alone doing their own thing, and they were actively looking for other people to bring into the company. So getting a chance to perform on what was essentially their show with their talent, being in the locker room with, Jeff Jarrett and Nick Aldis was their world champion, and, EC3 was on that event, getting a chance to, Matt Hardy was on that event too. We were trying to impress. We're trying to get a job. So there was definitely a lot of hype, and a lot of hope, actually, for the people that were involved in those events as well.
Now let's talk about Carolina Wrestling Federation Mid-Atlantic, which has a really well product there in the southern United States. Used to have a television show as well. I believe they still do. But, you had some great opponents there. You faced Eric Royal. You faced the likes of... You teamed up with Joshua Cutshaw. And you also, Chet Sterling. All these names you worked with or worked against are very, very successful people. So working for them and getting that start, how did that all come about? Like for you personally, getting the call?
That came about because of my time getting to work with Nova Pro. Nova Pro is no more, RIP Nova Pro. I loved you. But actually, me and Brandon Day, we started at Nova Pro together. Isaiah Santero, we later became Cutie and the Beast. But we started working there together, and that led to the relationship with CWF Mid-Atlantic. Brad Stutz was booking there at the time, and he just kept bringing us down. And CWF, man, that is probably the toughest crowd I've ever had to wrestle in front of. Because if you weren't one of their regular guys that they were used to seeing, you had your work cut out for you. You had to give them a reason to care about you. Whether you were the good guy or the bad guy, it didn't matter. Whether you're babyface or the heel, does not matter. You had to prove to that crowd why they should care. Yeah, so it was always a challenge, but always a welcome challenge.
And that's hard. It's like going and doing sales. You got to sell to the audience. I remember refereeing one show. It was the last show of Tony Candelo's Northern Death Tour. And I can just remember it being 20 people, and the biggest heel who got over every other night. The heels weren't getting over, faces weren't getting over, no one was getting over, no matter how experienced anyone was. So every crowd is different, and I think the best part you can do is learn how to work with different crowds and adjust to different crowds, because every crowd you work in front of is different. If you work a bar show, that's going to be different to working like a show at a birthday party or a family show. So you just got to adjust to the crowd and adjust the small ones, too, at times.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. You always have to be willing and able to adjust what you're doing or what you had planned to do on the fly.
Now, you also had a good time here in Rage. You debuted at the Rage Bowl, if that's correct, and you faced the likes of Ian Maxwell and Dirty Money, who I remember. I mean, actually had a great world title match there. That was a good match. You did fall a little short, but that was a really incredible. I think that was up on YouTube or something. That was in Rapids, Roanoke Rapids. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah, Roanoke Rapids.
Roanoke Rapids. That was a great match. But what was your overall experience there? All the shows were in that place.
Thank you. I actually had a couple of really fun matches there, and again, one of them was a tournament.
New Genesis tournament, wasn't it?
Yes, their version of a cruiserweight title. and I actually went to the finals of that because that's actually where I got to work with Ian Maxwell. Um, but the finals of that was myself versus Cam Carter. And that was actually a match I was really, really proud of. And then my very next appearance there was the world title match with Dirty Money. Both of those matches are matches I would stand by to this day. They were a lot of fun to be a part of. The chemistry with those guys was incredible. Just matches that I think we could take anywhere and entertain anyone.
And yeah, we've pretty much covered mostly all topics here. You wrestled in some other promotions off and on, like Dominion Championship Wrestling, but you also got to make a name for yourself in America's Most Liked Wrestling. What was that experience like overall? That must have been a good one.
Definitely a good one. Definitely another one of those little bit high pressure situations because I'd already established the relationship with them back with the joint effort with Global Force. But I've had a good time every time I've ever gotten a chance to perform for their fans. It's another one of those atmospheres where the energy is just there. So it makes it easy to perform for that crowd when there's that much energy. And hopefully, when the time is right, I'll be back in front of that crowd once we return to some semblance of normal.
Now, you talk about Nova Pro Wrestling and its unfortunate demise, but what are some memories that you could kind of share about working there? Whether that's a match, a segment, a promo, a certain show. What
Man.
about Nova Pro Wrestling kind of made it the best?
The whole run the tag team of Cutie and the Beast had was probably some of the most fun I've ever had in pro wrestling. Innocent Isaiah and we had one hell of a memorable run. We got to work the Bravado Brothers. We had a whole rivalry where we worked with the Carnies, and eventually I turned on Isaiah and joined the Carnies myself for about a year run. Some of the most memorable moments that I've been able to create in a wrestling ring have taken place there. I got to build my own faction there. I got to build the main attraction with myself, Jake Hollister, who's basically the equivalent of my wrestling son. The big man, Endgame Jourdain. The three of us, we were looking to be pretty unstoppable, and then of course Nova Pro didn't last, so it was unfortunate. But just some of the friends that I've made there, some of the fans who became friends, who became family. We had a couple after parties there, and actually some of that's more memorable than the shows themselves. We are unofficially in a boy band there. We're called No DQ. It's myself, our very good friend Edward Dow, Bro Keller, Tim Donst, and Eric Royal, the previously mentioned Eric Royal. Because we too many karaoke nights after events.
Yeah, and what is when it comes to creating a stable, what is one of the most important things? If when it comes to creating a stable, most of them are heel stables. So when it comes to working the crowd, what's the magic behind that in the stable as opposed to working one-on-one? Is it harder with groups, or is it easier in a singles sort of category?
It is harder with groups because, especially on the independent level, it's coordination, trying to make sure everybody's scheduled to line up to be there at the same time, things of that nature. But as far as building the group itself, the biggest thing is chemistry. People will be able to tell yeah, people will be able to tell if it's forced. Like if it's 3 or 4 guys that really don't like each other that much, but they're told to work together, the fans will be able to feel that. They'll know when it's not real. Um, but the main attraction, it was real. The three of us were definitely so close. Um, we had, of course, I'd known Jake for years. I was a big part of his development. But Jourdain and I, we had been friends for a couple of years because of Capital Wrestling. And when I asked him, like, hey, man, you want to be a part of this thing that I want to put together? He was like, yes, absolutely. Like, I definitely want in on that because when the three of us were together, you could see that the camaraderie, the friendship, it was just real. So the chemistry was there, and people really definitely picked up on that.
All right. Well, we like to do this part on our podcast called The Top 3. It's the top 3 road trip places you have visited in your career, and that could either be cities, towns, or villages. What would be a top 3 places to not just perform in, but to road in?
Okay, top 3 places. I'm gonna have to say the Northern Virginia crowd. It will always hold a special place in my heart. So the Nova Pro crowd that doesn't really have too much going on for them these days, but we'll get it together and we'll be back. So definitely Nova Pro crowd up there in the Annandale, Fairfax area in Virginia, and not too far behind that is absolutely, most definitely, Quebec.
Quebec, Canada.
Yes. Quebec City, specifically.
And why Quebec City? That's a very I never heard of all places Quebec City. That's very random. Why that one?
Quebec City took the spot because, thanks to Bob, myself and Dewan O'Neill got to join him and Tim Hughes on a couple of trips up to Canada to work events for North Shore Pro Wrestling. And just that crowd's electric. It was standing room only. It was they're literally packed in, standing room only. It was like 600-700 people there. It was fantastic. But then going and hanging out with the boys and stuff like that at this restaurant called La Belle et Le Boeuf in Quebec City is by far my favorite place I've ever gone to after a show. They light the tables on fire, and we're talking to staff, lights the tables on fire. They don't care if we get up on the bar or the table and sing and dance and lip sync Bohemian Rhapsody like I did that night.
Right on.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And then number 3, I'm going to go a little bit closer to home, just because I've done so much work at this promotion. Elizabeth City, North Carolina will always hold a special place in my heart. Next Evolution Wrestling. It's only an hour and a half away from me, but that's a place that I've tried to help build and cultivate since day one. Last 5 years of my career, I've been working their events to try to help build that company into what they want it to be. So that place will always hold a special place for me.
Right on, man. Well, you know what? We really enjoyed having you on, and for you to share your stories and perspectives is absolutely spectacular for not just our program, but for future listeners as well. Where can people follow you on social media, whether that's listening from Winnipeg to North Carolina all the way to New Zealand?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Facebook, Beau W.P. Crockett. I also have a fan page, the Beau Show, Beau Crockett up there. Quick search will bring me up there. On Twitter, at It's Beau Time, and on Instagram, at Real Beau Show.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for bringing the Beau Show here to the Jordan Garber Now podcast, and I wish you nothing but the best for you and your family in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being on, and I definitely would love to come back sometime.
Not a problem. We'll get you on very, very soon in the future. You take it easy.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. We are back with none other, and this is my first time interviewing a rapper here on the program, and it's none other than King Tragedy. Man, we go way back, and it's great to have you on the show. How have you been, man?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I've been really good. I've been very busy in my journey, and you certainly have as well. But as of late, you've been over rap media and rap press all over Canada, and even in the United States and across the world. But, you have a SoundCloud going. People can check that out on soundcloud.com/king-tragedy. And, Nick, you got a good following there, man. 35 tracks. How did that all begin for you?
I started off making music when I was 14. I started playing around with some buddies. We were freestyling and stuff. And a couple of them told me, you're really good at it. Just keep doing it. Keep going with it. So that was my intention with it at first. I just wanted to, play around with it, try and make some tracks. But a lot of people ended up liking my music. So I started I kept doing it, kept going forward. And eventually it started ending up being therapy. Like I found a lot of my life issues were getting resolved through music. So I just kept pushing forward. I ended up breaking addiction through music, actually.
Oh, good for you, man. Tell us a little more about that.
I was my drug of choice was MDMA. I like doing my Molly, but I ended up breaking an addiction it's been 5 years now. I've been clean. I used it at first. It felt like it really helped my music. It helped increase my creativity. But then it almost like stumbled down into psychosis where I had to do it to write my music. You know what I mean? Like I was always doing it. Otherwise, my music in my mind wasn't top to par. So I ended up quitting it, and I gave music a break for a couple of years. Started getting my mind clear, and then I jumped back into it. And honestly, ever since I have, it's just been the best thing I've done. I've gained a lot of attention for myself, and I've been moving forward positively in my life. So.
Hey, man, it takes a really strong person to quit. And, me being my party lifestyle, I don't really go into things. It's definitely a very hard step for someone that's been in that pothole. It's definitely really, really difficult. So I give you credit for overcoming adversities. But, was a lot of you and me, we both went to like a sort of a rough high school, where a lot of shit was going on at times. So, like, was a lot of your lyrics and a lot of your tracks based on, you growing up, or were you just coming up with things on the fly?
A lot of my music at first was more stuff going on in my life at home. It was like more behind the scenes of what I was dealing with and trying to express it in a way where people could actually pay attention and be like, oh shit, this is what I need to do to end up like helping this kid out, right? But it never ended up working that way in the end anyways. So
like, what was it like when you got an interview? You had not an interview. You had this song that came out. I'm just trying to find it out on SoundCloud here. And I see here 79.2K Cartier wrist featuring Little V. Were you featured in that song? Is that just something on your list, or like that's a pretty impressive number?
That's just something on my list. I help out a bunch of artists. Like I use this thing called Repost Exchange, and basically I just exchange tracks. I'll repost other artists, and they'll repost my stuff with their followers. So it's basically like a way of us just staying connected in the community, helping each other out.
Let's talk about your YouTube video that got a really good hit called I Am the One Nobody. I thought that was a really good video, going over the city of Winnipeg, telling a really good story in that song as well. I feel there's a really good amount of storytelling. And as someone who follows the pro wrestling scene and wrestling stories both of us know that storytelling is so important. So, like, how did that video turn out? Were you impressed with the final product? And is that one of your favorite tracks to date? And if not, like, what are a few favorites that, people should definitely listen to listening from around the world?
Man, I was so happy with the outcome of the video. Honestly, Rob, Shot by Rob is the one who ended up directing it. Roberto Gomez, you guys can hit him up. But definitely, man, he's the one who put in the work behind all that with the special effects. Him and I brainstormed a couple ideas, but he ended up taking the main role in that. I'll give him full credit for it. But in the end, man, we just ended up saying, I want to do this. And then he ended up saying a few things. I said, maybe in the background, try this out. And that's what it ended up coming out to. It was a masterpiece in the end. I Am the One Nobody is definitely a favorite track of mine. I mean, the only other track right now that it beats it in my personal catalog, sorry, is Options that I just ended up dropping. It's a sneak peek for Tragic Land, which is my album, which will be coming out on Halloween.
I see that. There's a song I actually posted a day ago. You were talking about Options at Tragic Land, and then 19 days ago I see Heartless. So, and you're also featuring like a lot of good artists as well, like Jedi Stacks and just other, like I said, lead the way when it comes to this. But Jedi Stacks, I actually heard of him. Really good talent. What is it like working with other people? Have you ever had any collisions, or were they mostly positive experiences?
There's lots of positive experiences, but there's a lot of bullshit in the back scenes too. I mean, some people don't have good work ethic, and other people do. So some people you got to get on them a million times, and it's like, hey man, what the hell is going on? Some people want to do a million things, but in the end, it turns out to them not even being able to do five. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
in this game, it's a lot of help me, but no one wants to help you. That's the way I look at it. So you really got to be on these cats if you want to get shit done, and that's why now I'm at the point where I've been so dedicated onto this. I've been on so many people that now I'm at the point where I've gained enough attention where I can start charging. And for me, it's a small amount. It's nothing crazy, right? But even taking that first step to where I'm able to charge for it is still a step in the right direction.
Oh, and absolutely. You've been making, I've seen you in like 3 articles in the past month. And you're also known, like it says on your SoundCloud page, aggressive punchlines. And it takes a lot of time to develop. How exactly long was that development, and when were you starting to get the kick of it?
You know what, man? I'd say 2 years it took me to get that good, like actually coming up with shit that was clever, putting new abbreviations in, trying different things, breaking words down, wordplay. I actually made a song with the alphabet. I tried every single different word, trying to rhyme it and go down all the way to Z. Like, I tried everything under the books. I had a lot of friends supporting me on the side. They would make me freestyle, and they would drop random words. They would make me go faster. They would make me slow down. They would, like, they tried tricking me all the time, but no one was able to.
Now, I have a love-hate relationship with the city of Winnipeg, but, there's a lot of people that like the rap scene here and don't like it. Now, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the whole scene as a whole. Is the Winnipeg rap scene, like, thriving right now, or is it, like, barely surviving? Like, what are your viewpoints on that? The whole scene together here in Winnipeg.
I feel like the whole scene is finally starting to come together a little bit more. I feel like people are actually, instead of banging heads with each other, they're putting their heads together and making better plans to work and move forward. Like, the whole community at first, I get the thought, or the mindset of, I want to be the one who does it first. I want to be the one to blow up. But when that's all your mind is set on, what happens when you do? What's your next step? Because now that's all you prepared for. You've only prepared for something so small that was a small-minded move on yourself, right? So these people need to stop being so small-minded and actually open up to the point and the possibility that if we all work together as a community, we can literally do everything. I mean, every rapper has about 5 friends, right? Well, your 5 friends talk to my 5 friends, my 5 friends talk to your 5 friends, sort of deal. That's how we are going to grow. That's the only way we're going to be able to grow in this city, because so many people have blasted music to other people that it gets to the point where it's annoying. And then when artists like us who sit there and it's like, we're grinding our asses off, we try and send you a song and you're like, oh, I don't even want to listen to it because you're from Winnipeg.
Because other people ruined that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what am I supposed to do because I'm from Winnipeg that's going to interest these people? Am I supposed to jump through hoops that are on fire? I can do that, but all it really does is create a smoke show in the end,
At the end of the day, Winnipeg's a really underrated market, and I feel like a lot more of it should be highlighted. And in certain ways it is, but I feel like it deserves that a little bit more recognition than it does. And when it comes to like other rap scenes in Canada, what are your goals and aspirations? Like, where else do you want to do a few shows? And I've seen you done some shows in Regina. You also done the Rookies venue, where I also performed that, ironically. So. Tell us about your rookie show that you did and, some other shows you want to do across Canada and maybe in the States once this whole coronavirus is going away.
Rookies is a pretty nice place. It's pretty chill. It's pretty laid back. I mean, they got the cheapest drinks in the city, so anytime that we throw shows there, everyone is having a good time.
$3 Jack and
But
Coke, you can't beat it.
no, man, you can't beat it. But the best part is when we're there, everyone's having a good time. I mean, I haven't really ran into any problems with anyone creating fights or arguments or anything like that. And sometimes that does come up. You're gonna have to deal with that once or twice in this genre. I mean, it's just part of the game. But knock on wood, Rookies is one of the places that I feel most comfortable performing at.
What we like to do on the podcast here is a top 3. You know, it can be current artists or past artists. You know, top 3 influences in your rap career, past or present, and go.
Definitely Capital Steez is going to be my top inspiration. He ended up helping me get through a lot of things when I was suicidal and depressed and had anxiety like crazy. He ended up getting me through a lot of things. Also, I'd have to go with, jeez, you got me stumped here. I'm thinking. I'd have to go with Prince. Prince was one of my influences for sure. I just liked his style of music, you know, it was different. It was something that spoke out to me. But another one that I would have to go with is Eminem. Eminem's always been like someone I've looked up to, you know?
Oh, absolutely. One of I'd say the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Hands down. I say top 3 at least.
Oh, the man's a goat.
Absolutely. Well, you know what, man? King Tragedy, thanks for taking the time to be on, and you mark the first ever rap interview on the podcast, so I appreciate your time. Any other final words? And where can people follow you on social media? Because we have listeners from Canada, we have listeners from Japan, Australia, all around the world, and they want to know where they can check you out.
Where you can find me is you can honestly just go right into Google and search up King Tragedy. You'll be able to find all my music there. If not, you can also go to my Instagram on King Tragedy Music. Right in my bio, there's a link that'll send you to a link that sends you to all platforms. I'm on everything, Spotify, Apple Music, you name it.
Right on. You guys can check that out. And thank you once again, King Tragedy, for being on the show.
No problem. Much love and respect for having me.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Jordan Garber Now podcast. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And we are here with none other than Ontario wrestling star MC Hardbody. Man, great to have you on the show. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. Huge shout out to Emerson Pritchard for MEP for hooking this up.
Absolutely. A big thank you to Emerson Pritchard and the company. Also,
see, we got it done 2 seconds in. We got it right out of the way.
We had to get that right out there because if it wasn't for Emerson Pritchard, we wouldn't have MC Hardbody on the Jordan Garber Now podcast. And also a big shout out to Shadow Extreme and the Northern Empire Wrestling crew. You know, they always put on a good show. So kudos and credit to them. But let's talk about your career and your humble beginnings. You know, what was your specific story and what specific wrestler kind of made you want to do what you do?
I mean, as a kid, obviously, I was a huge Shawn Michaels fan, and you know, always loved him when I was watching it, just as kind of like a kid being hooked into the energy of it. And then when I got older and realized that, you know, it was a work and all that, RVD was a guy right from the hop that, you know, I really gravitated towards liking. Guys like Brian Kendrick, Jack Evans, to name a few, Teddy Hart. So it was just like, it was always from the start I wanted to do very kind of, I don't want to say like the word high spotty or like, you know, indie-rific style matches, but yeah, just something very fast paced, hard hitting, real. That always kind of, you know, gravitated, you know, pulled me into wrestling. When I started too, I was 15. I got into training at Battle Arts Academy. It was in Mississauga, which was a great, one of the best schools, if not the best school in Canada.
Isn't
to start
that
wrestling.
Santino Morella's baby right there?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And yeah, absolutely, yeah. Compared, you know, out of everywhere you could have started in Canada, it was definitely one of the best bang for your buck places. And the stuff that I learned there was just, you know, you can't put a price tag on it. It was so beneficial to, you know, what I would do later on, wrestling, going to wrestle in the States, going to wrestle in Mexico, working up in native reserves, like all these tools that he gave me throughout training there, my 2.5, 3 years of training there, to be able to use them compared to if I would have just gone to, you know, a school that maybe a local wrestler was teaching or something like that, and, you know, had to go out there and kind of learn for myself and not be as prepared when the time came.
Let's talk about like the big ones first. You made it to Mexico, and you had a great run there. But like, talk about your first few matches and how that booking came about. Because a lot of wrestlers, it takes a lifetime in their career to get a shot in Mexico.
Yeah, well, when I started, like I said, I was so young, and I realized that it's exactly what I wanted to do. So I jumped in it, um, head first, full speed, and I went to go live in the States for about half a year. I was living in a church called Sanctuary. It's a wrestling um, kind of studio performance center, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't, but you could if you wanted to. And stayed there for half a year. I trained with CCW Chikara. So I always from the start, I went out and I did it. If I wanted something, I would go out and I do it. And I made a lot of, even if I wouldn't get the spot on the roster or the match booking that I wanted to, I was always meeting people and putting my best foot forward constantly. And that from that is basically how I got the opportunity to go down and work in Mexico. It was just one of my buddies being like, hey, listen, if you want to come down, here's some guys that you can message, put together a package of your matches and send it to them. Went back and forth with a couple guys, and then it was Crazy Boy from DTU who was the one that said he was going to bring me down to do hardcore stuff, which was one of the best places to get brought down to if you were to go down there as a foreigner.
Where was it in Mexico? Was it like in Monterrey? Because I heard like Monterrey is a great place for foreigners to, meet each other and learn new things. But where was it exactly, like in Mexico?
Their training school is in Toncingo, Hidalgo. It's like an hour.
Oh, that's a rough area, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It definitely was. It had a bad rap back in the day. I don't know how many days ago it was, but like when I was there, it wasn't as like I went to a lot worse places. When I stayed in Neza a little bit, which was like right next door to Mexico City, and that place was a fucking it was it was a pretty bad jungle. It was this big slum area where it was you'd hear gunshots at 3 a.m. for an hour straight. Like it was just it was pretty, but it was all a learning experience. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have changed any of it.
So there's no like walking down the streets of Hidalgo offering the Jordan Garber now trading card to people. Like you can't do that.
No, I mean no. Like you hear the resorts when they hand out like the cards of like the guys like the naked dudes on it.
Not aware of that, but now I know.
No, well, I mean like I didn't see it there, but I know a lot of Caribbean
Resorts.
Caribbean.
I heard about it
places,
in the Caribbean.
yeah.
That they did. That.
Mexico, Caribbeans. Come on, baby, you're dealing with the sun and sand. It's hot.
Fair enough. Like before getting to Mexico, though, where did you work in the States? Saying getting trained by Chikara and Mike Quackenbush. Like, holy shit, man. That's pretty crazy. So what are some U.S. places that you've been to that kind of stood out in your career for you?
I got to be part of Cage of Death 20 at the the ECW arena, the 2300 arena, which was really, really cool. I did run in like just dressed as one of Joe Gacy's like henchmen kind of thing. I got to take a kendo stick the shot there, so that was always cool. That was always something that I thought it was like, if the arena doesn't stick around for a long time, at least I got to, be in it and do a small part, be a small part of its history. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I worked a lot in Excellence. I was accompanied by some dude who was an electrician who hurt his back or something, and he put the money in. But they gave me a lot of great matches early on. I got to wrestle Hallowicked, Cobalt, a lot of Chikara's staple dudes, which when I went down there to train less than a year later, it made it easier to, I got to learn from Orange Cassidy before he got signed, which was cool. And yeah, they were all great. Everyone down there was so awesome to me.
Now, when it comes down to Canada and working up north, all that experience that you bring to the table, what's it like doing that other version of Culture Shock? Those native reserves are quite a different ball game. Going up there for the first time, what are some of the first few things you learned about the environment?
I know. I say that to everyone. It's like Mexico and then coming to work in the reserves. It's just like Mexico North, no Scott Steiner
No
pun
Scott Steiner.
intended, but like, yeah, it's just it's they're very like they're not similar, but yeah, it's just they're both exactly how you said it, culture shocks. First time going there, I was nervous as heck because you're a young kid, um, going in there, and I was breaking in with Pretty Ricky Wilde. He was doing phenomenal now, but we were just starting off at the time together, and we were nervous just being there, and excited and didn't want to mess up. But it was now going on it like I've been there so much. I've worked with other companies just like Northern Empire Wrestling on reserves, so I'm very familiar with the lifestyle there now. And it's easier for me to be there. But yeah, that first tour, like being away from home for so long and being there of all places, it was, yeah, times got pretty crappy, but luckily we had a good crew.
Absolutely, and that when it comes down to that, like I remember doing the Northern Death Tour as a referee, and wow, man, that was. I came back home and like I think I fell asleep for 22 hours straight or something like that.
That sounds right. Yeah,
It was like
that
just
sounds about right.
detrimental. Like we almost fell through the ice. It was insane. It was.
And as a ref too, and sort of carry up, but this it's
No,
to
no
put you over.
worries.
Like wrestling, we're trying to do all this crummy shit to make it to the next level. Like as a ref, you're doing all the same hard work as us, but you're out there the whole show, and you're not getting anywhere near as much of the glory as what we're doing. So it's like, yeah, being a death tour referee on the death tour is, yeah, that takes up a special person in its own mind.
Well, like I remember too, like Mark Merrick actually was he was gonna be the backup. They didn't think I was gonna be able to do it. Like especially with what I weigh now, and that's why I'm kind of sitting on the sidelines and taking that break for that few months while I gain 25 pounds. Because one thing I learned on that death tour is that your body is so important and how you treat it. Like when if there's one thing I could change, I would be eating. I don't know what that kind of fish is called, tapica or something like that. But like I should have been eating shit like that and tuna and things like that like months before the tour. Going on the tour, the hardest part was being exhausted and not having. And this still happens to me to this day. It's so important to have food in your system, good food, because when you're in an environment like that, you can definitely crash down. And I remember crashing and forcing myself to go to the next level. And that's how you learn life hard lessons. Is like on tours like that, I guess the best advice is you got to bring as much non-perishable food items as you can. You need to eat, like, because if you don't, your energy's gonna get sucked right out of you.
It truly makes you realize if you want it or not. And coming home from one of those, like, it does prep you for other shit that you're gonna have to deal with in wrestling. Like, it definitely makes you like if you do a tour and you still bright-eyed, bushy-tailed to do another one, like you're somebody that I would vouch for, stick up for, saying like, yeah, this guy really, loves this business and wants to be here or wants to, change it for the better.
And you know what? I could be doing that for 10, 15 years. But the thing in this business is like paying dues is so important, and I feel like a lot of that's been lost nowadays. And I know everyone says this, oh, you got to pay your due, and this is so repeated, but like people don't really know the true definition of that until you go onto a show. And the funniest part is that one show, that one tour, is just literally barely part of anything in paying dues. It's always paying dues, no matter what. And it was really good, man. It feels good to contribute to a team and get a good result. And that's what wrestling's all about. You're working with somebody in the ring. You both have to have a good match. You got to trust each other's bodies. And a referee is a very big aspect of that. Now, kind of transitioning, what are some guys in the ring that you just clicked with in the ring? You had some great chemistry with, and not just that, someone that you could recommend to have like a 30, 40-minute match with no problems.
There's definitely there's definitely a lot of guys out there. Wicked's one that you could do nothing like you could figure out a way to get through the whole thing with while not having to load up on stuff. Like I think I wrestled him for half an hour when I was relatively young in the business, like age-wise, not even just experience-wise, like extremely young. And yeah, he was able to make it, so we went a long time, and I wasn't flustered at any moment. Joe Leader, he's really good at spacing out his stuff. He's a AAA dude. Could easily go an hour with you and brawl all over the arena and have the people screaming the whole time, and you're really not even, you know, stressing at all. Um, yeah, there's tons. Brandon Tidwell, Nick Wilde, they're two friends that I trained with from a young age to now that I'm still tight with. So we obviously just know each other, really, really well. So we can kind of wrestle and just take all the stuff that we did for the years wrestling each other and put it in there.
There's a segment we like to do called the Top 3 on the Jordan Garber Now podcast. And for this Top 3, you've been on the road a lot. Definitely have a storied career. So what are the best 3 places to travel to on the road? And that includes stories involved with history with those road trips.
Definitely New York City, best place to go in North America, I would say. Always fun. Walking around, getting dollar pizza, and you know, doing the only shows I ever did out there was kaiju shows, the kaiju big battle shows. So it was always we would go dress up as monsters, wrestle in some bar, and then go walk around and get dollar pizza and buy like 6-pack stringer beers from bodegas.
That
So
sounds
that
like a
place is
good
rad.
time.
You do, right? Yeah, so that place is rad. I like I like anywhere pretty much in Mexico, but in Tulancingo was always fun because I knew the layout and I knew the bars and stuff like that, so I'd always have fun partying, drinking there. Um, and then I don't know, anywhere, anytime you're in a van on a northern tour, just
Oh,
the van itself, like
with
the
Tony.
van, yeah, right. Like doesn't matter where you are in it, it's just the van itself is probably one of the best places to travel in, you know.
A lot of stories told in those vans traveling up those northern roads.
Yeah, oh man, yeah, maybe not all for the podcast, but yeah, definitely fun. There's a deer that got, or I think I don't know, deer or something got mangled on the road, and we had this guy with us who was even younger than me, like just scared shitless to be there. And Frankie Valentine, this dude got out of the van and grabbed the antlers and both the deer's like legs and came back in the van and started swinging them through the window, pretending he was the deer trying to grab the kid. And I don't know, only there you would see like a grown ass man pretend like taking 2 deer hooves and putting them through his coat, pretending that he's a deer, trying to scare this kid.
Let's do some name association here. I'm going to say a name that you've worked with at least once in your career, and you just simply give me your thoughts on them. Starting with none other than Havoc.
Uh, Great dude. Represents the business well, and from the first time I met him to the last time I met him, he was always just a really, really bang up guy.
I remember interviewing her back in the day, Jules Malone.
Helped me a lot with hardcore, taught me a lot of like how to build match structure in hardcore, and yeah, did definitely did a lot for me.
Eddie Saps.
Dude, where is he now? What the fuck? Sorry to swear. I don't know if you
It's all
can use
good. Yeah,
it.
you
That
can
yeah.
swear, it's fine.
Yeah, Eddie Sassio, great guy. First indie opponent I ever wrestled.
What about Rich Lopez?
Uh, I mean, I remember Rich. He was always exactly super nice to me. I think he got either stopped working there where I was working, or got cut or something in like maybe 3 or 4 months of knowing him. But yeah, he's a good looking cat. Probably crushes a lot of women.
And there's one you talked about earlier in the podcast, but last but certainly not least, Hallowit.
Dude, best dude ever. Love him to death. Drove me to Wrestle Factory to train, and yeah, would always have your back. I don't know. Yeah, just took care of me so well.
All right, now where can like people, whether they're listening from Canada, whether that's the United States, whether it's Bulgaria or even Mexico, where can people follow you on social media and know everything up to date on MC Hardbody?
Right now, trying to push really hard. Blackballed podcast. Me and Pretty Ricky Wilde We've been doing it for about a month or two now. It's us just getting inside wrestlers' heads, having them on, and pissing them off as much as we can. So yeah, it's Black Belt Podcast on all social medias. Trying to get the numbers up on it. So yeah, if you guys could just put all your attention towards that.
Definitely, I will definitely be sure to spread the word. Wrestling podcasts, helping wrestling podcasts at the end of the day. Any final words that you have for our listeners from around the world?
Nah, it was cool. Thanks for having me. And don't get COVID. It seems pretty bad.
Yeah, guys, don't get COVID. Sit at home and listen to all the archives of the Jordan Garber Now podcast. And of course, please stay safe, everybody.